Good morning, Rabbi Sai. Live from Newark Airport at a stopover. Just landed, flew from Eretz Yisrael to Newark on my way to Utah. So Be'ezer Hashem, I'm going to try to do at least 2 shiurim, maybe possibly 3 if time permitting. Rabbi Sai, unbelievable. So I have to say tremendous shkoyach to Mark Ashkenazi, who secured this office space. If you look, it says EWR on the wall. I don't know if you can see, which is Newark. First time ever giving a shiur in Newark, so it's very exciting. I already gave one in Berlin, I think it was. Where was it? Different airports around the world. That will be our thing.
It was Frankfurt.
Frankfurt. On Yom HaShoah or something. Rabbi Sai, we are going to cut out the emails. We are going to go straight into the sponsors in order to be able to get these shurim in and me not missing my flight. Shkoyach to Avremi for doing all the stuff he does, crazy hours. Shkoyach to Gary Ben Moshe, who's been working overtime when Dave's on vacation right now. Shkoyach to Mark. Shkoyach to Kobe, to Ariel, to all the editors that are doing above and beyond. So Yishkoyach to everybody. Breakfast is sponsored Barry Siegel and family in memory of Yechiel Ben Tzvi Her Zechron Levrach. Yishkoyach all the people who donated breakfast in the base beverage every day. There's going to be a breakfast when I'm gone. The Masechet is sponsored by David Salomon, dedicated in the memory of Avi Meiri Reb Shmuel Baruch Ben Reb Chaim Tzvi Doiv. The Masechet is sponsored by anonymous Lili Nishmas Doidi Shlomi Yehuda Zechron Levrach Ben Shmuel Chaim. Anonymous, the schus refuah shleima Nochem Tzvi Ben Yenta, sponsored by Skyber Capital in honor of our friends Meir Kovacs Taki and Shamshi Shlavrak for the devotion to Torah study and this year. Joel Gedalius, Lina Nishmas, my father Jack Gedalius, Anonymous, Hatzlocha Baruchnius Ubegashmius, Anonymous from London, monthly sponsor, Parnos B'Sheva, Anonymous Broch Hadabli Daya Baruch Tzvi Nisim Ben Shoshana Leo Yehuda Ben Yomim Ben Chava. Daily sponsors Jeffrey Haskell, Lili Nishmat, Avi Moiri, Chaim Ben David on his 35th yard side. Mordechai Sepaznik, the Zech Nishmas of Meir Shapiro, Zech Tzag may he be a Melis Yosha for Eli and MDY. I was supposed to be at the Kaver. I have to ask a public mechila from the organizer who set up a beautiful tent for us and advertised, and for different reasons I had to make the trip a little earlier than I was anticipating, one day earlier, and Be'ezer Hashem, he forgives me. MDY Art monthly, Refuah Shlema for Yonatan Eitan Ben Beshav Bracha, Refuah Shlema Mordechai Ben Esther, Refuah Sayel Daniel Zev Ben Ayel Esther. Did I miss anything? No. That's it. Okay, Rabbi Isai, here we go. We're holding by the Mishnah Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph. Yishkoich again, it was very heartwarming to see 25 people show up at 5:30 in the morning. Many of them don't go to that early minyan, and even if they do, they don't get up that early. They're not at the shul that early. So Yishkoich to all those people who came to MDY for the live shiur right before my flight. Yishkoich Gadol. Yishkoich Gadol to Yossi, who drove me to the airport. Yishkoich Gadol. Says the Heilige Mishnah, Kochi Goyim in Chayovim Aleim Mishum Pigul Noisar V'Tomei. A guy is permitted to bring a carbon, and when he does, if the kohen has thoughts of pigul that he's going to eat this carbon in a week from now, you're not chayiv kares. If you leave it overnight, you're not chayiv kares for noisar. If you are tamei and you eat the guy's carbon, you're not chayiv. Here's the pasuk. It says, "Ish mi beis Yisrael u'minager b'Yisrael asher yakrav karbonu l'chol dreiv l'chol d'voisam asher yakriv l'Hashem la'ila." From here, the Gemara darshans. This went on. This is on. They're able to see because over here. Okay, yeah, I see over there. Shkoyach. Zog the Gemara. V'ashoich adam achutz patur. And if you take this carbon of the guy, you bring it outside of the Beis Hamikdash, and you shecht it, you potter. Divrei Rebbe Shimon. Rabbi Yossi mechayev, and Rabbi Yossi says no. As we're going to see in the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi says that a guy's carbon is like a Jew's carbon. There's noisar, there's pigol, there's tuma, there's shkita bachutz, everything. By the Israeli Shabbaton, we had Rabbi David Kaplan who spoke beautifully, and not there, but he said at a different time. He said a Maisa, I like the Maisa. There was a shviger who came into Eretz Yisrael, a mother-in-law came to visit her daughter and her son-in-law. And she asked her son-in-law if he could arrange a local taxi driver to take her around. And she said, I'm a little concerned about our cousins, the Ishmaelim. Make sure it's a Jewish driver. Sure, no problem. But the problem is that the son-in-law's driver that he had was an Arab. So he spoke to the Arab and he said, listen, do me a favor. For the next week, you got to wear a yarmulke. My mother-in-law, she wants a Jewish driver. Pretend you're Jewish. Fine. The week was over, and the son-in-law asked the mother-in-law, "No, how was my driver?" She says, "Unbelievable. In fact," she said, "he was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He was mamish, a bucky, a big Talmud Chacham." Okay, Zok the Gemara, Taner Rabbanan, Kachi Goyim Lo Nehenim V'Lo Mayalin. Although you're not permitted to have any benefit from the guy's carbon, but if you do have benefit, you're not over on Me'ila. Typically speaking, if you go and you benefit from a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash or anything in the Beis Hamikdash, and the Gemara is going to discuss the difference between Kachi Bedek Habayis and Kachi Kachim, or Kedushas Aguv, Kedushas Damim. If you do benefit, typically speaking, you would have to pay an extra 25% and bring a carbon Me'ila, Shamila. Over here, since it's a non-Jewish carbon, you're potter. Loi Nehenin, you should not benefit from it, but if you do, V'loi Ma'alin, there's no Isser Mila. As we said in the Mishnah, since it's a non-Jewish carbon, so there's no Chiyov, there's no Isser, Pigol, Noiser, Tommy, you don't get cars. Ve'ein Oisin Tmura. Tmura is when a person has a carbon, he designated this carbon, a little skinny guy, and then he sees a larger one, a better one. He says, I want this larger one to be instead of the original one. The halacha is that it's also to do so, and if you do, both of them have the same gedusha, but if that one, the original one, is a non-Jewish carbon, and the guy does the tmura, or even a Jew does the tmura, no good, we have a video. This is typical tmura.
הרי זו, תמורת זו.
Does that mean it's muted for everybody? Okay, so that's that one. And here's our new one for today. This is the non-Jew trying to make tmura.
היי רביי, אני צריך לעשות תמורה. הרי זו, תמורת זו.
No, that's not. Oh, you want me to move over a little bit? Okay. Says the Gemara, the non-Jew does not bring a carbon nesachim, meaning bring wine, just as is, just the wine, together with the carbon, yes. Let's say he brings Ayla, he should bring the nesachim.
Do you have any updates on
Aval carbon, ta'on nesachim. When he brings a carbon, he should bring nesachim. Divrei Rabbi Shimon. Or Rabbi Yossi. Rayani bekulan lahachmer, says Rabbi Yossi, that's the Rabbi Yossi we had at the end of the Mishnah. No, I'm going to be machmer on everything. Shenemar bohem lashem. So let's go back to the pasuk. In the pasuk that teaches us that a goy could bring a carbon, but at the end it says lashem. Lashem means everything is like the Jewish carbon, and therefore there is an Isser Pigul, and if the Kohen thought of Pigul Machshava during the Shechita, and he ate it afterwards, he's Chayiv Karas, same for Noisar, Tuma, and Chutz. Yet, the Gemara says, B'med Dvarim Amurim. There we go. Oops. Oh. Now, there's two things, two different categories. This Koche Mizbeach, and this Koche Bedek Habayit. I saw you taking a picture, it's okay. Koche Mizbeach is an animal that could be brought as a carbon. It doesn't have any blemishes, no mumim. And it was designated as a carbon, so it's Koche Mizbeach. But let's say you donate an animal that has a broken bone. It's possible for the Mizbeach. So you're donating it for the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. The money is for the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, when do we say that there's no pigul, noisar tome, etc., when it was designated by the goy for the Mizbeach? But if he designated it for the Beis HaMikdash, then there is Me'ilah. Before I forget, I said it 3 times. I want to say it again. One of the biggest kisses from Hashem is that this Daf Mem Hey, which is for Zayin Cheshvan, is in Tosfos, B'Shiva B'Mar Cheshvan, about 20 lines from the top Tosfos Hilchos of the Mashiach. He brings this date, Shiva B'Mar Cheshvan, which is also the yard site of Reb Meir Shapiro. Says the Gemara, brand new sugi loy nehenim v'loy mayalin, that you should not benefit from the idol worshiper, the goy's carbon, and if you do, you're not over mi'ilah. Says the Gemara, the gomar mi'ilah chet mitruma, because we learn out the idea of mi'ilah from truma. The betruma ksiv b'nei Yisrael v'loy goyim. By truma, there's the halacha that it applies to Jews and not to the goyim. So in Mela, since we have Gzeir Shava, the word cheta and chet, we compare the two. And so by Me'ilah, there's no Me'ilah by a goy. So when a goy designates a carbon and you benefit from it, you don't have to pay the Beis HaMikdash the extra 25% and bring a carbon. Ben chayavim olav mishum pigul noiz v'tameh. Why? My time. So I asked this question yesterday. I'm going to ask it again, just in case you didn't see it. What's the halacha? We saw this video here. Let me show you the video. Let's see if we can find the video. This one. This video, it has audio. It tells us that, well, it works.
למדתי אותה מהקש. מדוע אני לא מצליח לשכפל אותה שוב מהקש? דבר חלמד מהיקש לא חוזר ומלמד בהיקש. אם אתה רוצה ללמוד שוב, תשתמש בקל וחומר.
Okay, so what do we see from this video? That when you have one hekesh, you cannot learn out from one hekesh. Let's say you learn B from A. A teaches B. That's it. It's stuck at B. B cannot go further and teach C. But if you use a kal v'chomer, yes. So let me ask you a question. Let's say A is tefillin, and from tefillin you learn halacha to tzitzis. Let's say that you need lishma and tzitzis. Now, can I take B and teach C, which is mezuzah? And the answer is yes. Why? Because tefillin, tzitzis, and mezuzah are not kachim. This halacha of not learning from a hekesh to another hekesh is in Mesechtes Zevachim and Menachos and kachim, not in the rest of the Torah. So let's see inside. It says the Gemara, my time. The asi pigul oven menoisar v'asi noisa chilul metuma ubetuma ksib b'nei Yisrael v'leigoy. Let me show you. It's very, very simple. By Tuma, it says the word v'leichalu. So I'm going to learn Noisar, the center one, from Tuma. And I'm going to learn the left one, Pigul, from Noisar. So I'm learning Pigul from Noisar and Noisar from Tuma. So it turns out that I actually learned Pigul from Tuma. Because the only way I know Noisar is from Tuma. And the only way I know Pigul is from Noisar. So Pigul I learned from Tuma. What does it say about Tuma? It says in the bottom, we brought the pasuk, B'nei Yisrael. that the idea of tumah, of me eating a carbon from when I'm tamei, eating a carbon and I'm chayiv for that, is only when it's a Jewish carbon, not when it's a non-Jewish carbon. So the same thing by pigul. Pigul only applies to Bnei Yisrael and not to the guy. Let's see inside. Dasi pigul oven menoizer. So the Gemara starts off from the left, from the end. It says the word avoino by pigul. It says the word avoino by noiser. So I learned pigul from noiser. And where do I know noiser from? I learned it from tumah. I'm sorry. By noiser it says the word chilel, and by tumah it says below yichalalu, it's chilel, and by tumah it says bnei Yisrael. So maybe I know pigul all the way from tumah. We're tumah ksiv bnei Yisrael v'ligoyim. V'noisim tmura. My timer. Why can't a guy perform tmura, take his animal and say, and this animal is instead of the first behema, the first carbon. My timer, the iskash tmura lemaiser behema, or maiser behema iskash lemaiser dagon. Oh, so something very, very similar than we just had on this chart. And let's do it over here. Here we go. So here's the hekesh, maiser to tmura. In Pasuk Lamed Beis it says maiser bakar, it's the maiser of the animals. And in Pasuk Lamed Gimel says tmurasoi. So that's a hekesh. Because they're so close to each other, I'm going to learn one from the other. The next Pasuk. Oh, it says in the same Pasuk, aser to aser, a double lashon. One is talking about the maiser of animals, another one is talking about maiser dagan, the produce maiser that you give. Oh, and by maiser behema, it says Bnei Yisrael. So Mamela I know, I'm sorry, by Meiser Dagan it says Bnei Yisrael. And Meiser Dagan I learned to Meiser Behema to Tmura. So let's see how that works. Here we go. By Meiser Dagan, all the way on the right it says Bnei Yisrael. By Tmura, all the way on the left, I'm able to learn Tmura from Meiser Behema, and Meiser Behema from Meiser Dagan. So by Kitzer, here, there's arrows actually. I'm learning Tmura from Meiser Behema, and I'm learning Meiser Behema from Dagan. And it says by Meiser Dagan, Bnei Yisrael. You saw how beautifully the words jump. Ask the Gemara, how do I know the center one Meiser Behema? I only know it from Meiser Dagan. So how could the center one teach Tmura, which it itself doesn't have a source? The whole source is from a hekesh, from a limud. Says the Gemara, no, Meiser Dagan Chulin, who the one all the way on the right is not kachim. It's produce. Produce is not a carbon. So Mela, it's ki'ilu. I'm learning directly Tmura from Meiser Dagan. Says the Gemara, that's great if what matters is the source. The Meiser Dagan all the way on the right, it's not kachim, it's chulin. But what if I go by the one I want to learn too, which is Tmura all the way on the left? Tmura is kachim, and it shouldn't be able to learn a hekesh from a hekesh. Oh, in the arrows you could see the word hekesh. Beautiful. You see it's like hekesh from a hekesh. Gewaldig. Yoshi is great. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara. When do you take Meiser Behema? When you have newborn animals, you have 10. One of them goes to the kohen. But there's no, it's a chayiv, you have to do it, but there's no specific time that you have to do it. And the halacha is v'chayiv she'ein l'zman kavua Yisrael maisu goyim loy maisi. Anything like that, a goy does not bring. Period. Fine. Next sugya. Ve'ein meviim nesachim. A goy does not bring a carbon nesachim all by himself. Taner Rabbanon Ezrach mevi nesachim ve'ein hagoy mevi nesachim. From the word Ezrach. First of all, what is Nesachim? Here we go. Beautiful. Oops. Let's do it again. Okay, so that's Nesachim where he's on top of the Mizbeach. He pours the wine into a special hole there. It's the kli, and it goes down. By the Nesachim, it says, Kol Ezrach Yaseh Kocha Esela. So, Ezrach maybe Nesachim, Ve'ein hagoy maybe Nesachim. Yochel Leitei Lasei Tuana Nesachim. So maybe you should never bring wine. Even when he brings the oila, you should not bring the accompanying wine. No, this is how it's done. Oila, you always bring wine. Says Rabbi Yossi, when it comes to a non-Jew, he's just like a Jew. His carbon has the same chumras of pigul, noisar, tuma, chutz. Rani ani b'kol lachmer. Medvar mamurim b'kachim mizbeach. So the Gemara explains. Shimon says there's no me'ilah by a guy, and in that me'ilah, there's no me'ilah is by kachim mizbeach benat bedekabais. My timer. What's Reb Shimon's reason that there's no me'ilah by a guy? Ki gamra me'ilah chet mit truma. Do me the truma. The whole me'ilah you learn from truma has to be similar to truma. What's truma? That when you have produce, you give 2% to the kohen. The dumi the truma has to be similar to truma. The kadisha kedusha zakuf. Truma it itself is inherently kadosh. Ava kedusha is bedekabayis. But when it comes to things that are dedicated to the upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash, kedusha's damim, it only has monetary kedusha, not inherent kedusha, not itself. It itself is not kadosh, just it has monetary kedusha. Like, in other words, there is me'ilah for the guy when it comes to things that are kadosh kedushas bedekabayis. Nu sugya. Tan Rabbanon, dam shenitma uzrakai. You have blood. You're about to do the zrika onto the mizbeach, and the blood became tameh. You're not allowed to pour it onto the mizbeach. He went ahead. B'shoigig hurtza. Dam shenitma uzrakai. He went ahead and he did do zrika with it, even though he shouldn't have. It was by mistake. B'shoigig hurtza. He gets a ritzui. It's a good kapara. What's pshat? So we know that the Kohen Gadol wears something called a tzitz on his forehead, and that tzitz has the power. That's what it usually accomplishes: is the ritzui, a kapara for something that's tamei. And here's a case of using something that's tamei, even though you shouldn't have. There's a ritzui. Daf mem hey omid beis. Oh, and this is very important. Rabbi Isai, we are going to have a live New York, New Jersey. I think it's somebody from the what do you call it? From the airport. Be'ezer Hashem, there's going to be 2 shiurim, if I could get a flight to New York. But Be'ezer Hashem, 5 towns, Motzi Shabbos, at 9:45, Beis Medrash of Cedarhurst, the Shtibel, and in Lakewood on Sunday at 9 p.m. 9 p.m. on Sunday in Lakewood. Beru. 9 p.m. Okay? Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach. If we already stopped there and said that, we might as well turn to the daf. Turn to the daf. Adar Global Linin Shmas Reb Zelik Ben Reb Avram Meir Meisels Linin Shmas Reb Yehuda Doy Ben Reb Yisrael. Anonymous says it's chus Vatzlach and Ruchnis in Gashmis. Judah Lisheva and Batya Schlesinger for Hatzlach and Simcha for Yol Yudah Ben Devora Lisheva Miriam Bas Chana and Bat Bas Lisheva Miriam. Daf Mem Hey Omid Beis. So we're talking about blood of a carbon that became tamei. You shouldn't put it on the mizbeach. B'meizid, if you did it by deliberately, you did it loy hurtza. You don't get a kapara. Says Rashi, we're talking about a knas de Rabbanon. Rabbanon penalized him. That what? You don't have to bring another carbon. Just the penalty is that you, the kohen, cannot eat it. Why? Because you shouldn't have poured that blood when it was tamei. But with the Raisa, the guy got a good kapara. That's only by an individual. We know the famous concept of tuma hutra b'tzibur. The concept of tuma goes away when the majority of Klal Yisrael are tamei. Now we're making a distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew, and by a guy, b'shoigeg u'b'meizid loy hurtza. It doesn't matter. Even b'shoigeg, the coin is not allowed to eat from it. Amru Rabbanu Kamed Rapapa Keman, and they said, who could this go according to the like Rabbi Yosi? It doesn't go according to Rabbi Yosi. Why? The Rabbi Yosi, he says there's no difference, there's no distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew. They're all the same. And Memela over here also, why are you telling me by a Jew there's a ratzon, there's a hurtza, and by a non-Jew when he sprinkles the blood, the tumah, b'shoigig, there's no ritzui. They're the same. No, you could say it goes according to Rabbi Yosi. No, even Rabbi Yosi would admit in this case by blood that became tamei, since the Torah says the word lohem by the tzitz, by the pasuk of tzitz, it says lohem. Lohem means to Klal Yisrael. The goyim don't have a ritzui from the tzitz. Omali Rabbi Nasan, the Rab Papa Elamiato Asher Him. Oh, let me just show you the pasuk real quickly. This is the pasuk by tzitz. V'hoya mitzacharon should be on his forehead, and at the end it says lohem. Lohem means to Klal Yisrael. As the Gemara, so if so, by Tum also it says dabel bnei Yisrael. Haim. The haim is referring to bnei Yisrael. So the idea of Tuma, according to Rabbi Yossi, also should not apply to a non-Jewish animal, only to the Jewish one. And he says no. There's no difference. There's no distinction between a Jewish animal and a goyish carbon. The tzitz, let's see if it's in this pasuk over here. Yeah, l'rotzain lahem. The word right before lahem is l'rotzain. L'rotzain, what does rotzain mean? To have favor by the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom should favor Klal Yisrael. V'goyim lav b'nei hartzah ninu. The way I see it is that a Jew is the son of the Rebbeinu Shalom. He has that kirva to the Rebbeinu Shalom, whereas the idol worshiper, he doesn't have the same kirva. He might be like a friend, like an acquaintance, but not the same rotzon. You don't have the ritzui, the favor. So I want to tell you over, even though I said it yesterday in Shir, I want to say it again. I had a few new artists, and it's a beautiful piece. I never heard this before. I can't believe nobody said this mashal. You hear, Mark, my new mashal. It's an original. I know you, Mark, you have status. You fly a lot. What status do you have?
1K.
You're 1K already?
Give you brachas.
So you heard my thing. Yivaldik. 1K. People work their whole life to get to 1K. I know people that were on the verge of 1K and they fly to London and they come back, and during COVID they were going crazy. What's going to be now? I didn't go to Eretz Yisrael. They're gonna take my 1K away, and they go to Hawaii and they come back the same day, and 1K.
Resets every year.
It resets every year unless you lock it in. Like I know a certain individual. If you have 3 million miles, you're locked in for life. And if you get 4 million miles, you're locked in at Global Services for life. So, listen to this. We got to do chazara. Everybody who signs up to the airline is a member. But it depends how much money you spend and how many miles you fly. And based on that, you get to silver, to gold, to platinum, premium. 1K, depends on the airline, whatever it's called, 1K, let's call it United, 1K, Global Services. When you are 1K, or you have certain higher status, you're allowed more luggage, you're allowed more weight on your luggage, you're allowed to bring your wife with you, you get more privileges. And when you sit and you learn Torah, and you do mitzvahs, either you fly miles or you pay bucks, whatever it is, then you get more status, klapi the Rebbeinu Shalom. You're in an elevated thing. And we have more status, so you get away sometimes with a little bit more, just a little extra weight on the suitcase. You get to carry around 2 suitcases, sometimes 3. You bring your mishpach with you. It's different status, different levels. That's why people work so hard. Why is this guy learning so much Torah all day long? Because he wants to get to 1K. He wants to get to 1K and he wants the 3 million miles. That's why. Why is this guy doing so much chesed, running around and bringing and coming? You know, Yossi Klein, I got to say Yishkoch to Yossi Klein. Mish Cup. How long did he drive here?
2 hours.
2 hours one way?
From Connecticut.
He drove 2 hours to pick me up from the terminal that I landed in to bring me to this terminal, even though I could have just taken a bus, but it saved me 3.5 minutes. So he drove a total of, and he thought he might be able to come into the shir at the end he didn't have this, that, whatever. So
the shuttle is 25 minutes.
It is? Yeah. And what about an Uber? Okay, so he did save me 25 minutes. Maybe because of him, we're going to be able to hop around a third chair. But a tremendous yishkoich to him. He drove literally over 3 hours just to drive me from this terminal to that terminal. I love this this marshal. I hope nobody has big tinnitus on me. What you know, different status? Because well, yeah. Listen, people that have global services in Yiddishkeit, they get Ruach HaKodesh. That's how it works. You get that extra bonus. You can see the future. You can see who's doing what. So yeah, you're gonna live. You're gonna die. No, chazal, not like that. But you know what I'm saying? There's different madregas. You become more beloved by the Rebbeinu Shleilam. Sometimes the global service people, they'll hold up a plane for you. Literally. They'll say, you know what, we're not going to take off until this guy, and we heard that he's in security, they'll hold up the plane. I know from such stories. And then the 1K people, they I don't have to tell you, Mark. They come to your house, they pick you up with a nice black car, and they pick you up, they can bring you straight to the plane. It's all, but you have to put the work in, and it takes years. It's not just nobody gets to 1K into global in 3 months. You have to put in the work, you work hard, and you get there. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to get to 1K to global services. Not bad, no? I never heard anybody say this, Marshall. Now they're going to start taking. They heard it here first.
This morning the Ilam had some good hours, no?
Like what? I didn't hear them. Oh, you mean in Shir itself? Dvarim she'ein chayav aleim shum pigul. Says the Mishnah, there are things that you don't, if you eat them, you're not paying attention if I'm skipping words, right? I better be careful here.
Oh, I was looking before
That's fine, it's fine. I hope not. Usually I skip during a regular share and people I have to be extra careful. Yeah, Nachman. Dvarim she'ein chayav aleim shum pigul. So, remember we discussed the kmitza. The kohen puts his hand in, takes a little bit of flour. That doesn't have a matter. That is the final step. Nothing is going to be matter of that. So Mamela, there's no pigul on it. So dvarim shein chayavim aleim mishum pigul, chayavim aleim mishum noiser mishum tamei. But yet, if you leave the kmitza overnight, then you're chayav. Also, what if you are tamei and you eat it? You're chayav also. Chutz min adam. When it comes to the blood, which doesn't have a matter, blood doesn't have a matter. It's the final step. It's the sprinkling on the mizbeach. The dam, as the Gemara is going to explain why, does not have noisar. If you left it over, you're not chayiv a noisar, and you're not chayiv if you are tamei and you ate it. You chayiv anyways, kares, but not for tuma. Reb Shimon chayiv. The davar shedarken lechol. Reb Shimon says, wait a minute, time out. If it's something edible, levine is not edible. Kmitza, the flour, okay. But something that's not edible, you're not chayiv. Wood. Sometimes people, you know that people would bring a carbon, wood as carbon, and every carbon you have to add salt to. So that you bring wood as a carbon here, and bring a piece of plywood to the Jerusalem, you have to add salt. Chidushim of kachim, we're learning chidushim here every day. But well, it could also refer to the wood that goes on the mizbeach. Vaktoiris, ein chayavim alav, mishum tuma. Says Reb Shimon, there's no chiyuv of tuma on wood and levina. Here, let me just show you this video. I'll remind you that even though it's not the greatest video, it wasn't one of my favorites, but it will remind you that we did learn this once upon a time here in Zevachim.
אני אשמח
You like these videos?
לאכול עצים. סליחה? עצים. הכי טוב שיש.
רגע, אז זה מה שהצלחתי למצוא.
מצוין. פריך. זה היה מוצלח. אשמח לבוא גם מחר.
Zog the Gemara. Taner Rabbanon. Locha yacha lo yu chayavim mishum tuma ela al davar sheyesh lematirin bein la'adam bein lemizbeach. Perhaps the idea of tuma, that you're tummy, you the human being is tummy, and you go and you eat something. Maybe it's only something that you ate that it has a matter. Something else could allow it to be brought onto the mizbeach or to be eaten. Bein la'adam bein lemizbeach, whether you're a human being eating it as a steak or the mizbeach is eating it. V'dinu. Pigul, when you think about eating a carbon or the steak outside of it's a lot of time, it has, what if you do it by mistake? A guy came over to me, a nice guy, I forgot, He says he's doing the shir. First time he's learning Gemara like this, and he's in his 60s or so. He saw me. He came over. He said, I'm doing the shir since the beginning of Zevachim. He asked me a question about this. If you do by mistake, yeah, you're chayev a carbon chatas. You're chayev. But it's a kavua. It's only one type of carbon chatas. Ubiyidio achas. And there's one awareness that you're doing pigul. And there's never a heter to do pigul. But the reverse is true in all these three things by Tuma. And nevertheless, and the idea is that you are only chayev on something that has a matir, right? The kmitza, you're not chayev, pigul on it. But the mincha, you are chayev. Why? For pigul, because it has a matter. When you put the kmitza on the mizbeach, when you sprinkle the blood, that's the matter for the meat. Tuma, but on the flip side, tuma, shiba oilavi yored. Tuma has a different type of carbon. The carbon called oilavi yored. It depends how wealthy you are here. If you're very wealthy, you bring an animal. If you're medium, you bring birds. If you're shvachamaisis, then you bring flour. Here's the way they depicted it. Oila v'yard, going up and going down. Going up and coming back down. Okay. So there's three different things that it could be. When it comes to Tuma, you have to know that you are Tame, then you forgot that you're Tame, and then you remember again that you're Tame. So there's two awarenesses. We know, we discussed it earlier today, that Tuma goes away completely when it's B'tzibur, when the majority of Klal Yisrael is. So certainly you shouldn't be chayav only if it has something that's matter that allows it to happen, whether it's for human consumption or for the mizbeach's consumption. Okay, so you have a special pasuk. You don't learn a kavachomer tuma from pigul. So I think that if somebody's magdish an animal, even though it's not even the meat is not able to go into the mizbeach at all, you should be chayav if you are tomei and eat it. It has to be karev on the mizbeach. But the word yikrav means to get close. What, just by getting close, touching, you're going to be chayav kares for touching? There's no such thing. What does it mean? We're talking about the type of meat that's available to put on the mizbeach. It's what does it mean? It's able to be put on the mizbeach. If it's something that, let's say, zrikas adam, so you put the dam on the mizbeach, now it's able to be put onto the mizbeach. Let's say it doesn't have blood. When you put it into the kli, let's say the kmitza, you put the flour into the kli, the second kli, and that makes it osir to eat when you're tummy. Says the Gemara, Ashkechon Tuma. I see a case where I'm eating the kachum when they're tummy. Here we just discussed it. Noisim and Olan. How do I know that when a noisar, this leftover, whatever it is, that doesn't have a matir, how do I know it's also osir? Osir chilo tuma. I learned from Tuma with the Gzera Shav. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute. Who told you to learn? Here, check out this chart. Givaldik. We have Noisar. The Gemara says, how do I know Noisar? That if it doesn't have a matter, it's Osir. I learned it out from Tuma. But I can learn it out from Pigul. And Pigul, we said, if it doesn't have a matter, there's no Isser. Right? Like the Kmitza. Again, you take the kmitza, this has zero matter. That's the end of the station. It's the last stop. There's nothing that's matter it. So if you eat it, b'pigol, you're not chayiv. So there's no chiyuv if you learn from pigol. And if you learn from tumah, there is. Noiser is in the middle. I can learn from both. The Gemara does a classic thing. If you learn, there's three things that noiser are similar to tumah. Gimel, Zayin, Lamed. Great way to remember it is gezel. But the Gemara asks, but pigol has five things. And if you have five things, you should really learn Noiser from the one that's much more, it's more similar because it has five things in common. So that the Gemara is going to answer. What are the three and the five? Mistaber min tuma havali lemelav shekain gazel simin. Gimel zayin lamed. Gimel stands for guf. When it comes to pigel's in the head. It's machshava. But tuma and noisar is in the body of the animal. The animal itself is tummy. The animal itself was left over. Zayin is rika. There's no zrika by tuma. There's no zrika by noisar. Only by pigel. And finally, chilul. There's no lashon of chilul by pigel. But there is by tuma noisar. So mela is similar. Adarab pigel avalil melav shekain hutar. Noisar and pigel are similar. The what? Only tum is hutra b'tzibur. Noisar and pigel do not have hutra b'tzibur. Tzitz. There's no tzitz meratza. The tzitz is only meratza by tuma, not by noisar and pigel. Tar. They themselves are tar, where tuma is tame. Bisman, noisar and pigel have a clock. It's because of something happened with the time. They were not timely. They stayed overnight. Pigel is a thought about tomorrow. Tuma has nothing to do with time. Karev. What?
Karev.
No, vanity efficient means more. What's karev? That they're puzzle the carbon, but Tommy and Noisar, the carbon itself is not. This is Tommy. Here's the person, the makriv. The makriv is Tommy by Noisar. So Gemara, vanity efficient 5 verses 3. 5 is more. Says Gemara, Levi. So how do I know Noisar? How do you know that Noisar? We're talking about Noisar also. It's a double lashon. Chalalu, it's plural. Instead of loyachel v'chalalu, 2 lamens. As kach b'nei Yisrael. B'shnei chilulim ha'kos medaber. The Torah is talking about 2 things that become defiled. Echad psul Noisar. You see, so the pasuk is talking about Noisar. V'echad psul tuma. Raboisai. Have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDYDaf.com.